Welcome in, everyone, to episode 112 of the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damien, here with co-hosts David and Matt. Today, we got a bunch of trades have happened over this past week or so, or past couple weeks, actually. The Tampa Bay Rays signed 3 players to extensions. We had another extension take place, and the Astros finally hired their general manager. But before we jump into all of that, Matt, we missed you last week, so how you doing?
Doing pretty good. I hated that I wasn't able to make it last week, but with the recording being on Wednesday, that's a tough day for me. So I glad to be back this week. Everything's been going pretty good. I'm ready to talk some baseball, get into some trades. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing all right. It's pretty busy time, but with work and starting to study for the PE, doing some other stuff. So it's been a busy week, but a nice one. And we got to talk about the Hall of Fame last week, and this week we're just going back to the moves, kind of wrapping up the offseason, getting ready to start the baseball season. So, Damien, how you doing before we get started?
I'm doing pretty good myself. Had a decent week after the chaos we had last week, and then getting the Hall of Fame voting out of the way. So here to, like you mentioned, wrap up that kind of final episode really before the off season ends and we get into spring training and looking forward to the 2023 season. But overall doing pretty well myself. But wanted to go ahead and jump to Matt here to start the episode. You weren't here for the Hall of Fame episode last week, so why don't you give your thoughts on the voting and kind of what you thought of that whole scenario?
Yeah, I was not. I don't love the way the voting went this year, but it was better than it has been the last few years. I think that congrats to Scott Rowland. He was a deserving Hall of Famer. I'm a little surprised he actually got in, honestly, because of just overall counting numbers and stuff that a lot of the more old school balloters vote for. But he was easily a Hall of Famer when it comes to just the metrics and how good he was all around as a player. Great offensive player, great defensive player, good base runner for somebody that was a third baseman. He's a world champion, super good player, deserving of the Hall of Fame. So congrats to him. And I was a little encouraged by a few guys who moved up on the ballot. I've been long of the opinion that Andrew Jones is not being in the Hall of Fame is a travesty, and he's gotten a lot closer. And it seems like, based on previous voting and where guys are at certain years, it seems like he's probably going to get in. Todd Helton is going to be really close too. He had a good year on the ballot. I think Billy Wagner, he's a shot still. And then, Carlos Beltran's a guy who, with his first year on the ballot, went pretty well considering the recency of that cheating scandal with the Astros. So I think it's pretty cool that that maybe some of the voting is going to get a little bit better here going forward, and we might see some of these guys get inducted in the next couple of years. So I guess we'll have 2 Hall of Fame inductees this year, and Scott Rowland being on the traditional ballot, and then of course Fred McGriff being on the Veterans Committee. So definitely better than the 0 that I think we were kind of expecting.
Don't forget about Adrian Beltre and Joe Mauer too, both guys.
Yeah, they'll be on there starting on the ballot next year. So I was talking to kind of guys who were on this year, but yeah, definitely Adrian Beltre is a shoe-in. He should be unanimous, but I mean, I'm sure somebody won't vote for him because they're dumb, but he should be unanimous.
Perfect.
Absolutely, he should be. But let's go ahead and jump into the moves that we've had happen over the past couple weeks, and we'll go ahead and start with probably the biggest move, and that's with the Miami Marlins and Minnesota Twins striking a trade. The Marlins, it had been rumored for a long time that they were going to trade Pablo Lopez back to, I believe, a couple deadlines ago, and then into last offseason. Didn't happen. Up to this deadline, got a lot of rumor or a lot of traction. Nothing ever happened. And late into this offseason, the Minnesota Twins were able to gain some traction on that. So the Twins acquire Pablo Lopez, shortstop prospect Jose Salas, and outfield prospect Byron Chiriot, while the Miami Marlins acquire batting champion Luis Arias.
So this is an odd trade. Damien and I had the same reaction when we sent this trade into the chat, and it was, wait a minute, the Marlins are giving up more than just Pablo Lopez for Luis Arias, which is really funny to me. Arias is awesome. He's a completely different type of player than pretty much anybody is playing in baseball these days, right? He's the antithesis of the power hitting slugger type DH guy. He's a walk more than you strike out, never strike out contact hitter, but who hits with really good exit velocities and can, sustain a reasonably high batting average on balls in play. To the point that he just generates a lot of value from a lot of contact. Great leadoff hitter, great guy to have at the top of your lineup. But, Pablo Lopez is 26 years old, and he's the type of pitcher that I've felt was maybe a slight pitching tweak away, maybe a change with the shape of his slider, or, just something where he's like a tweak away from being just absolutely an ace. And, for at least a guy who's been able to throw 180 innings last year, I just have a very difficult time in paying more than just him for Luis Arias, right? I mean, if anything, I really felt like the Twins should be adding to Arias to get to Lopez, but both of these guys just came off of their career best seasons. Their values have not been higher in their career, and the projection systems have Arias being better than he was last year and Pablo Lopez being worse than he was last year, which would fall in line with the way that the two teams valued these trades. I don't know that I would agree with the projections. I think I'd kind of lean towards Pablo Lopez either emulating what he did this year if he gets the innings, or increasing and improving on that, because he did have an ERA higher than his FIP. But Arias, the projections like him to be a higher WAR player than he was ever in his career. And I don't know, man. I just don't know that I agree with that. But this is a fun trade. Marlins actually making a move for a major league player. That's exciting. We'll see what else they have to offer, but I'll let Matt touch on the other, kind of aspect of this trade.
Yeah. So, just to touch on what you were talking about, I think that I've watched a lot of Pablo Lopez as, somebody who watches a lot of National League East games, and I think he's good. I don't think he's an ace. I think he's more of like I think he's a good number 3 for a good rotation, and that's exactly what the Twins need, is just pitching depth. I mean, they were about to run out some not super good arms to start the season, so they needed this guy. And the Marlins have so much young pitching that they could afford to deal a piece if it returned major league talent, as they're close to being ready to compete, but maybe not quite there yet this year, with all their young, upper minors guys like or new call up type guys that they have. So, Pablo Lopez is a guy. He's not going to strike out a ton of guys, but he's got pretty good control. Gets the ball on the ground decently well. Doesn't give up a ton of hard contact. He's your prototypical innings eating number 3. He never has really eaten that many innings. Is kind of the struggle with him. Is like his career high is 180 this past year, but before that, he'd only made 21 starts in the season 2019. And 20 starts in 2021. So he's dealt with I don't know if it was injuries. I don't really remember, but he hasn't been like the most reliable guy to be there every start. And then you look at Arias as a guy who I think he's going to come down to defensively, because the Twins were DHing him a lot. And I mean, if he can play a average or close to average second base, then I think Arias is going to be a really, really good player for Miami. But if he DHs, then you kind of gave up a really solid rotation arm for a DH, plus giving up more, which the more to it is Jose Salas, who is a 19-year-old shortstop, made it up to high A this year. And so I think Fangraphs actually had him on their top 100 this year, but or at the end of last year. And he was pretty good in 2022, had solid numbers at low A, and then went up to high A to finish the season. And it wasn't great, but he's 19 years old, so maybe fell off a little bit. He only had an 88 WRC plus at high A, but he's young for the age and stuff, or young for the level and stuff. So we'll see what happens in 2023 with him. But he is somewhat of an interesting prospect at least. And then they also gave up Byron Churrillo, who is a very young 17-year-old switch hitting outfielder, and he's got pretty good size, and he crushed it in the Dominican Summer League last year in 51 games. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with those guys. I was a little surprised that they gave up. Honestly, I felt like Arias for Pablo Lopez was a pretty fair, just straight up, split, but trade, if you just traded the two of them. But definitely interesting to see maybe, what ends up coming out of this and which one of these guys ends up being more successful next year.
Yeah, the head scratching. So this move it didn't make a ton of sense to me either way. You're acquiring Arias as for the Marlins. You're taking your second baseman Jazz Chisholm, who was ironically just announced as the MLB The Show cover today, and you're moving him from second base to center field, a position he's never played. When you already have a ton of outfielders as it is, and you're trying to play him at second base, where the Twins have already failed to play him at. And then tried to put him at first base and found out he was still bad at first base as well. And now your second, third, and shortstop lineup as it stands right now is Arias at second, Joey Wendell or Jordan Groshans at short, and Gene Segura at third. Like that, you have two or three of those people who shouldn't be playing any of those positions. Like it's head scratching to say the least there. And then looking at the Twin side, I mean, it's great. They get that pitcher. Or I guess mainly it'd be from the Marlin side, because Salas is a guy who I really, really think can be a really good player. He's one of my prospects in our dynasty league that David and I are in. Like you mentioned, he was the top 100 guy. He was at 83 overall in the Fangraphs rankings coming into this, or at the end of last season. There's a lot of power that he can grow into there. Plays a solid enough shortstop. He might have to switch to second base long term, but a guy who I really, really enjoy watching some, the little bit I've been able to see. I think this trade is by far a win for the Twins. Derek Falvey just did an amazing job on this one in my eyes.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Byron Churio is not related to Brewers prospect Jackson Churio. I had to take a look for that one. They're spelled the same, but they are different. Churio does have a brother, but I believe he's in the Twins organization.
Well, there you go.
Might be the Guardians organization. I'd have to double check. Yeah, I think it's Guardians. Yeah, Jason Churio is the Guardians. He is Jackson's brother, but Byron is not a member of that family. So there you go.
Sheesh. Sucks. But anyways, the Twins, that was not the only trade they made this week. They went on to acquire outfielder Michael Taylor from the Kansas City Royals for left-handed pitcher Evan Sisk, I think is how you say it, and right-handed pitcher Steven Cruz.
Yeah, Michael Taylor is a very, 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 very good defensive outfielder. Throughout his career, he's put up fantastic metrics there. With the bat, he's not great. Even although this past year he was close-ish to league average with the bat, like he was 90 WRC plus, which isn't great, but it was close-ish. And he also cut his strikeout rate a lot this past year, which is nice to see. He's always been a really high strikeout guy, and without having a ton of power, that's kind of a really not good. But he did have that 90 WRC plus this year. Put up his second best on base percentage of his career. He's got some speed. This guy is a perfect fourth outfielder, and good defensive replacement. And if you end up with a situation like Byron Buxton being injured, which seems to come up about every like couple weeks during the season, then you got a guy who you at least feel like is a major league caliber player coming out there to fill in for him. So and he's really not going to cost you much defense even from Buxton, as good as Buxton is out there. So we'll see what happens with this. I don't think it's a huge deal, and I don't think it automatically makes the Twins a much better team, but they added some good depth, which is nice to see.
Yeah, people were calling for Michael A. Taylor to the Cubs before they signed Cody Bellinger this offseason, and I delved into this move a little bit early on, and I just did not want him to be my starting center fielder, right? But in the role that Matt just described as the fourth outfielder, I think he's a perfect fit. You'll look at this Twins lineup, and with Joey Gallo in one corner, Byron Buxton in the other corner, you have enough offense there to rather easily supplant the below average bat that Michael A. Taylor is going to bring. He doesn't have to be spectacular at defense. He's certainly starting to decline a little bit. He was not as good as he was in 2021 last year defensively, but this, like you said, this is a guy who is going to bring that defensive value, kind of like Kevin Kiermaier signing for the Blue Jays this year as well. He's jumping into an already crowded outfield, and he's just going to provide that stability when you know that you have hyper athletic guys like Byron Buxton, a guy who slumps a lot in Joey Gallo. He can always come in here and just kind of even the playing field. Right now, Max Kepler is still on the Twins. That could change, and we could get into a Max Kepler trade. He's theoretically available, but you've got those four guys. I think that's a really strong outfield, and the Twins have made really good moves this week to try to close that gap between them and the Guardians.
Yeah, part of me wonders if they end up looking, if they do trade Kepler, they still have Trevor Larnach, who's on the bench as well.
Right, and Kirilloff.
And, Kirilloff will probably play first now that Arias is gone.
Yeah.
But they even have Nick Gordon, who was DHing for them, who could play outfield as well. But part of me wonders if this move isn't a thing to put Michael Taylor in center field and then make Byron Buxton your primary DH. Hey, don't even worry about going out there on the field. And I mean, we might be able to throw you out there once or twice a week, but most of the time we're just going to have you DH and stay off your feet and just worry about being the dynamic hitter that we know you can be and not sacrifice yourself on the field, because that's where a lot of his injuries are defensively. Him all out diving into walls or running full speed into walls or something along those lines. If you put him at a full-time DH when he's actually healthy and let him just go to work there, I think you see the offensive production pick up there. Not worrying as much on the defensive side of it.
I would not do that.
It's tough because he's so good in the outfield and in center field specifically, right? I mean, this is a guy worth 66 outs above average, 68 defensive runs saved in his career in center field since 2015. I mean, he has been a well above to elite hitter there his whole career, or fielder there his whole career, and that's with being a dynamic player at the plate. And in the limited time of his injuries, I'd hate to give that up. And Taylor, while good, is aging, and he's not going to be nearly as effective as Buxton out there. I do think Buxton could be moving to left field to try and mitigate the strain of playing center field and allow him to be a little bit, still allow him to play that outfield well, but without that added strain of having to cover both gaps.
Yeah, and maybe you give Buxton a little bit more rest. This allows you to have enough depth to maybe give him a couple days off, here and there. But I mean, Buxton's a really good hitter, but when you look at his career, I mean, he's not a good enough hitter to be an elite DH. I mean, he's a good hitter, but you're putting him in the outfield. He's a very good hitter, but outside of 61 games in 2021.
His last 3 years, he's been over 120 WRC. But I think he's a great hitter at this point.
He's a very good hitter, but for a DH, is he an elite hitter for a DH?
If he's hitting games, like he was his last 3 years.
In 92 games, he just hit 28 homers.
Yeah.
Could you imagine what he would do if he had 150 games?
Well, he had a 136 WRC plus in 2022, which is a very, 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 very good number.
But he was also dealing with a knee injury and an ankle injury.
Yep.
That's
right. But
my thing is if he's not having to deal with those injuries from playing in the outfield all the time, and you just put him at DH and say, "Hey, just worry about this for now."
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're sacrificing so much defense by putting him at DH. I mean, like David said, maybe play him in left field a little bit, maybe DH him once or twice a week
You're
to
not
save his body.
Sacrificing anything when he doesn't play.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
in his last,
I was thinking
if you're telling me that if I'm going to be able to DH Byron Buxton and I get 150 games, or I'm going to let Byron Buxton play the outfield and he's going to average 70 games over the last 4 years, I'm taking the 150 games over the half of that just so he can play center field.
Byron Buxton will put up more WAR by playing 92 games in the outfield than he will 150 games as a DH.
I don't give a shit about WAR in this scenario.
Okay, whatever you say.
I want Byron Buxton on the field for me.
I want Byron Buxton to play to his full potential, which is being the best outfielder in baseball, best center field defender in baseball, while being a really good hitter as well.
But Byron Buxton's last 2 seasons, 2021 and 2022, 636 plate appearances, which constitutes about a full season. 47 homers, a 150 WRC plus. that's combined both seasons, including the 170 in 2021, but also the more down in 2022. I don't know that you could get that out of him in one season, but if you suppress those numbers a little bit, 130 WRC plus, 35 homers or something, that is a really good DH. And if he could moonlight as an elite defensive left fielder, I do think that you would see an increase in overall production from Byron Buxton.
I mean, maybe you see an increase in production at the plate over a long, counting stats wise. But like I say, I cannot imagine that the Twins would play the best defensive outfielder in baseball as a DH for 5 days a week. I just can't imagine that happening. I might be wrong, but I just think that would be crazy.
Would you rather not have that guy play then?
If I got 92 games of an elite 5-tool player, or 150 games of a good DH, I would take the elite player for 92 games.
That's tough because, it depends on what, if it's the first 92 games of the season, right? I'd rather have Buxton in the playoffs. I'd rather have a healthy Buxton when it comes down to October more than I'd rather Buxton be on the bench, even though he put up 5 WAR in 92 games. But it didn't matter, right? He's not there for me in the playoffs.
Thing is, at this stage, the Twins aren't good enough for him.
They can make the playoffs, and if you make the playoffs, you need Buxton.
They can make the playoffs, but they need Buxton to be able to make the playoffs because look at last year.
So they need him to be healthy, then, correct?
Right. He got hurt and they went down.
Right.
He got hurt August 22nd, and they went down.
They were not even going to be in first place on August 22nd if Buxton was DHing the whole time.
He was well hurt before that anyway.
Right, but
he hurt his knee in May.
Yeah, did he get hurt diving into a base or something?
I think
and I think he
got hurt on the base paths too.
Hopefully the bigger bases do give him a little more cushion in his slides and stuff where he's more safely in. I mean, you could tell he just stopped stealing bases too. Only 15 stolen bases in the last 2 years, and this is a guy who could easily go 40-40 if he was healthy for a full year. So. It's just tough. What do you do? He's fragile, but you want as much of him as you can get. So,
yeah. Well, the Royals weren't done making moves as well. They ended up trading their often injured starting shortstop as well, Alberto Mondesi, to the Red Sox for relief pitcher Josh Taylor.
Yeah, Adalberto Mondesi is really weird because. He was a top prospect. He came up. He's a world champion. What is it? No. He came up the year after they won the World Series.
After.
Yeah, but he was. I remember him being a prospect, when they were in the World Series and stuff. And then he came up the year after, and he's shown flashes of being good, but he's got an astronomical strikeout rate and astronomical stolen base totals. But he doesn't get on base, and he hasn't really hit. So. But one of the biggest problems for him has been injuries. I mean, he's played 2022 played 15 games with injury. 2021 played 35 games. I mean, it's been injuries. And before that, he was a slightly below average hitter who still, he played the full season in 2020, but it was, the 60 game schedule. So, he's never played a full season, but he's had a couple good years. Like 2018, put up 2.5 wins above replacement with a 113 WRC plus, which is really solid. 2019 in 102 games, put up 2.5 wins above replacement. He stole 43 bases in 102 games in 2019. So this is a guy who can be a really, really good terror on the base paths, and in some ways it's surprising to see the Royals completely give up on him with the place that they're in as a franchise right now. But you got to remember, while it seems like he's almost like a prospect and hasn't played, this is his last year before free agency. So they're going to give up on him regardless because he's going to free agency. So you might as well get something for him. And they got a pretty nice reliever for him in Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor's not great, and he's coming off an injury, but in 2021 he was not too bad. He put up a 3.40 ERA and a 2.83 FIP in 2021 in 47 innings. So I believe he's kind of one of those crafty lefty type guys, which isn't quite as big of a thing now because of the 3 batter rule. But Josh Taylor's a pretty solid he's a pretty solid left-handed arm that, you add to the Royals, and for a guy that they really didn't feel like they were going to get very much out of. So definitely an interesting trade here.
Yeah, so it stinks that Mondesi has had such an issue staying healthy, and his issue is like Byron Buxton compounded by 10%. I mean, Mondesi is the type of guy who, with these given rule changes and a healthy, 162 game season, could be the guy who steals 100 plus bases. But it's been years since we've seen him at full power, stealing 40 bases. In with old rules, old base sizes, and no pickoff limits. I just think, as a lottery ticket move for the Red Sox, this is spectacular because you can put him or Trevor Story at shortstop. You could bat at Mondesi ninth in the lineup and try to just kind of generate some action before the top of your order, featuring Devers and Trevor Story and Verdugo and the good hitters there. I don't know that he does anything for the Red Sox playoff hopes because every game you get from Mondesi is a bonus. But it really wouldn't shock me if he was finally able to put down something successful, especially given these rule changes. Because this is like kind of a dream come true for a speedster like this. And as for the Royals, they need Bobby Witt to man shortstop for the next 10 plus years. So I think they're focused on that, and at this point Mondesi is an afterthought.
Yeah, and for the Red Sox, it's just throwing darts at the wall. With Story going to be out for who knows how long into the year. I mean, Mondesi might not
That's
even
right,
be ready.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's just with Story having Tommy John, or the brace inside, whatever he's doing. I guess not technically Tommy John. He might not be back this year. Mondesi had tore his ACL at I believe early on in last season, so we don't even know if he'll be ready for opening day. So it's just kind of throwing darts in that outfield. I think right now the plan is to move Kike Hernandez to shortstop, and then you got Mondesi. You'll have Christian Arroyo, and I believe Rob Refsnyder somewhat is able to kind of just be your second baseman for now until Story comes
train
back.
wreck.
Golly, man. I think they really thought they were going to re-sign Bogarts there, man. We'll get into the Red Sox on the preview series, but my goodness,
they're not good.
Yeah.
They're in trouble.
Another little deal. I was just looking at the roster resource page and I forgot to put it on here. The Red Sox had DFA'd Matt Barnes last week, and they ended up trading him to the Miami Marlins today to get left-handed reliever Richard Blyer. Basically money's going to end up being even, so it's basically just a wash, and they basically replaced the left-handed reliever in Josh Taylor that they traded for Mondesi and Richard Blyer by getting rid of Matt Barnes.
They had just DFA'd Matt Barnes too, former closer for the Red Sox. Nasty stuff, but prone to wildness, prone to kind of meltdowns and blowouts. So
he's the anti-Richard Blyer.
Right, yeah, it's the complete opposites. And the funny quote I saw was that the Marlins were looking for veteran presence in their bullpen, but I was like, that's what Richard Blyer is. He's just a veteran presence who just gets in there, gets some outs. Occasionally he'll give up 3 hits in a row because, well, the ground ball got through. But,
Blyer's like 35, isn't he?
Yeah, I know, he's old. Yeah.
I will say, I think the only thing, Matt Barnes has a lot of experience closing out like really close games and stuff. Blyer, and from watching the Marlins a bit last year, like they barely ever used Blyer in any kind of tough situation, even though his numbers overall were pretty good. Like they rarely, I don't think they trust his profile at all, even though
I don't think anybody does.
I mean, I don't either, but yeah, I mean, he's striking out like as a reliever under 6 guys per 9. Yeah. So, it's working. It's working.
The Brandon Kinsler profile.
Sinkers only. More extreme than Brandon Kinsler, really.
Yeah.
So one thing it's kind of fun. I was just looking at it. This might be the oldest bullpen we've ever seen. You have Kenley Jansen at 35, Chris Martin at 36, Ryan Brazier at 35, Blyer at 35, and then you got Schreiber at 29, Tanner Houck, who is technically in between, he's like a swingman at 26, and then Cutter Crawford at 26. Like their youngest guy's 26 there, and they have 4 people 35 or older in the bullpen.
Schreiber and Jansen, I think, are going to get the majority of the late inning chances there, though.
Yeah, probably Martin too.
Yeah,
Martin
Martin
might.
too. Yeah.
Jansen will be
So.
their closer, but
Yeah,
Jansen will be their closer until he has that one bad month that he always has.
yeah, he'll be. They're not
And
not
then-
their closer for a month.
Yeah.
Then he'll be back to being their closer again.
Right.
Yeah. Well, both of these teams did make other moves as well. The Red Sox signed Adam Duvall to a 1-year, $7 million deal. And then the Royals today re-signed Zach Greinke to a 1-year deal. But the other big move was, we were talking of old closers. The Royals signed Aroldis Chapman to a 1-year, $3.75 million deal that has bonuses that he can reach up to $4 million more dollars.
Yeah, I can start with Duval because he's been with the Braves the last several years, and he was pretty good for the most part in Atlanta. Last year, or in 2021, he hit 38 home runs between Atlanta and Miami. Was a big part of the World Series run. Played center field for the Braves after Ronald Acuna Jr.'s ACL injury. And then this past year, he was not good. In 86 games, had a 32% strikeout rate, only an 87 WRC plus, and he was not quite the same guy playing the outfield defensively. His center field, I think small sample size might have helped that a little bit in 2021 because the metrics really liked him there. 2022, it was more not great. He only had a 401 slugging percentage, and for Adam Duvall with his profile, if he has a 401 slugging percentage, it's a problem. So he had a really rough 2022. He actually ran the bases really well by the metrics. It kind of saved his WAR, but it was a little rough. And 1 year, $7 million for a guy who, he's in 2021 he put up almost 3 WAR and and hit 38 home runs, had an almost 500 slugging percentage. So it's worth a risk of $7 million for sure, especially for a team like the Red Sox, which have, as we've been talking about, they have no outfielders. I mean, because they're moving their best one to shortstop. So, I guess they still have Verdugo, but it's rough. So,
And they
Adam
signed
Duvall.
Yoshida.
Oh, right, Yoshida.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean,
I keep
who
forgetting
knows
about
if he's
him.
actually going to be good.
Right. Here's the thing about Adam Duvall is that you have the splits. Duvall had a 129 WRC plus against lefties last year.
Yeah.
With the Braves, but the Braves used him primarily against righties. I think he'll be a strict platoon bat to fit in there as DH or center field against the lefties. That's where they're going to play him the most. I think he really struggled a lot worse against the righties. So this is kind of an easy decision. This is a guy a year apart from hitting 38 home runs.
Yeah.
So, that's in there. But I think he's just a huge penalized. He was penalized horribly by the juice ball being taken away last year.
Yeah, and also, you got to think about that 38 home runs. He still only put up a 103 WRC plus. So he had 38 home runs, but he was league average hitter. And it's because he doesn't walk and he strikes out a ton. So it's like, and with his fly ball profile too, his batting average on balls and plays is always going to be low. So like it's home run or bust with him, which is fine for a corner outfielder who plays pretty good defense and is a platoon bat. But that's why he's only making $7 million next year. So.
I'll jump into Aroldis Chapman. Cubs legend was on the mound in Game 7 of the World Series. What happened then we won't discuss, but what we will discuss is that he has been really falling off the last couple of seasons from the dominant closer that he had been for all but that Game 7 of his career. And he's kind of at the point now where he's a flyer for a bad team like the Royals, who are now hoping that they can trade him at the deadline to get, some compensation in return, because Chapman's down to, I think, 98 miles an hour on the fastball right now. And, if you've watched Aroldis Chapman at all, if that fastball is not up there in velocity, it's really hittable. So, his fastball, his slider's never been particularly good. He's introduced a splitter recently. That's not been particularly good. But, this is a Hall of Fame closer. But he's going to need to grab a few more of those counting saves in order to, I think, cement that legacy. And, the Royals are a decent spot to do it. They don't have an established closer right now. I don't think they're going to prioritize Scott Barlow over Chapman here, at least to start the season. So he'll have free reign, I think, on the closer's role, but he's going to need to get those walks under control and get some of that velocity back.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll get the velocity back, but he could at least stop walking 7 guys per 9 innings. It might help some, even if he's not striking out
Mhm.
quite as many guys. He gives up a few more, home runs or something. Like he can still be a solid reliever at 99 miles an hour, 98 miles an hour, but he can't be giving up 7 walks per 9 innings. That's just not good.
Yeah.
So, but moving on from him, we got one more we talked about, and Zach Greinke. And he's back for one more year, I guess, which is great. I'm very happy to see Zach Greinke back. You mentioned Aroldis Chapman being a potential Hall of Famer. Well, Zach
Yep.
Greinke's a surefire Hall of Famer, and
First
at least
ballot.
he should be. You never know with the voters, but he should be. And I think it's good. It's good to see him finish off his career in Kansas City. He wasn't really all that bad last year. He didn't walk anybody. I mean, he didn't strike out anybody, but his numbers really weren't all that bad. He had a 3.68 ERA in 137 innings and a 4.03 FIP. So it was helped by just not a lot of home runs on fly balls, but solid season for him last year. Honestly, at age 38, we'll see if he can just kind of provide that veteran innings eating 2023 and have around a 4 ERA and have some good memories to finish out his career.
Here's my favorite part about Zach Greinke is first of all his velocity has increased from 2020 to 2021 to 2022. It's gone up. That's on his fastball. Second off is that he throws his slider harder than he throws, he throws a sinker harder than he throws his fastball. He throws his changeup the same speed as he throws his fastball, which is 86. He throws his changeup 86, 87. He throws his fastball 87, 89. That's amazing. And if you ever watch a Pitching Ninja, GIF of Greinke's overlaid pitches with the changeup and the fastball being the same speed, with the changeup falling off the table at 86, it's just fantastic. There's so many anecdotes of Greinke being just a hilarious dude. Damian's seen him on the Dodgers. He's just a great guy. It's good for baseball that he's around, and he was downright good last year, man. So, it's right that he's on the Royals finishing up his career. I hope he kind of announces when his last year is going to be. But to this point, it feels like, if he's got more in the tank, he's going to keep going. So, Greinke feels like the kind of guy who's going to pitch till he's like 43 or 44 and like absolutely his arm's falling off and no one will give him a chance.
Yeah, Greinke absolutely will not announce when he's retiring. He is the most like anti-media.
He might retire.
Time.
He might retire just like after a game in June. If he
100%.
gives up like 4 runs, he's just going to retire and be like, I'm done.
100%.
Bye, guys.
100%, he's going to pull the Vontae Davis and just like in the fourth inning, you're just going to see him come off the mound, not even know, and then he just won't be back out there. And then he'll just tell you in the dugout, like, or a post game, yeah, I just retired or whatever.
Yeah,
we'll hear
maybe. At least hopefully it's not the Antonio Brown though, where he's running around without a shirt on.
Maybe, but Greinke is one of the funniest people you mentioned. I have plenty of stories of stuff that he used to do at the Dodgers, like when he got mad at Puig and threw his suitcase out into the middle of the streets in Chicago. That was one of the all-time best ones. Walking into the draft room and asking the GM who they're going to draft, and when he said Corey Seager, he goes, "Hey, that's a good pick," and then turn around and walk right back out. Just like that. But I think the best part of Greinke is that you mentioned all his velocities, and then he'll throw a curveball at 40 miles an hour up to the plate.
Right.
And just watch you just stand there at it and be completely straight faced at it the entire time. Like it was a real pitch that he expected strike calls on and stuff. Like Zach Greinke's hilarious. I'm glad he's back because he's always a character to watch for sure. But let's go ahead and jump over to the last trade that we had happen. That was between the Baltimore Orioles and the Oakland Athletics. The Orioles acquiring pitcher Cole Irvin and prospect Kyle Verbitsky, while the Oakland A's acquire prospect Darryl Hernandez. Does that sound right?
Yeah, Hernandez. It's funny. I went and looked up Darrell Hernandez, right? He had a 4 WRC plus in AA last year. Now he's 20 years old. He's gonna improve. This is a small price to pay for a major league starter in Cole Irvin, who is pretty much just an innings eater at this point. But a crafty lefty to have some depth in the rotation.
He's controlled too.
Yeah, it was a. I don't think anybody believes Cole Irvin's anything more than like a 4 or 5, but
no,
yeah, for the prospect lotto tickets that the A's are hunting are these toolsy guys with a lot of swing and miss, and I just cannot see that working out. We've kind of talked about Esteury Ruiz in detail, and her this guy, I can't remember his last name, Hernandez, feels like another type, guy like that. A lot of power, a lot of speed, not a whole lot of contact, not a lot of hit tools. So we'll see if he can kind of pick it up once he's gotten traded to the A's. But again, I don't like what the A's are doing at all. And Cole Irvin was controlled. He had a lot more, maybe value if you hold on to him a little bit longer until the midseason where a team needs some innings. I don't know. I don't like this trade. I don't like anything the A's are doing. I don't like who they're targeting. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, Hernandez, I don't know a ton about him, but I mean, 2022, he went through 3 levels. He was good in low A 2022, had a 132 WRC plus, had a 127 in high A in 2022 as a 20-year-old, really solid. Then very short, 13 games in double A. His strikeout rate ballooned, but it was a really small sample size. Late in the season, he's 20 years old. He might be something. I don't know. He was on their top 20 prospects. So or he's going to be on the top 20 prospects for the A's. So not a terrible prospect. And Cole Irvin is, I mean, I think you kind of hit it. He's a back end of the rotation type guy. He's definitely worthy of being a big leaguer. He's a good, crafty lefty, and he doesn't walk a lot of guys. He walked under 2 guys per 9 innings last year. He doesn't throw hard, but he doesn't strike a ton of guys out, but he gets fairly soft contact. He's probably going to be a guy who you're probably hoping gets you 5 to 6 innings, gives up 3 runs in a game, more so than being like, coming out and being real inconsistent or being an ace or something. Like, he's probably just going to be a good innings eating 5. And honestly, the Orioles need those types of guys. I mean, because I don't know how much upside they have in their rotation, but he adds to the floor of it. I mean, because I think Cole Irvin's going to be a decent number 5 starter regardless of where he's at. So we'll see what happens there. And I know absolutely nothing about the other guy. So
Yeah.
Verbitsky.
It's worth noting that the Orioles are bringing up Grayson Rodriguez, who's one of the best starting pitching prospects in baseball next year. You've also got DL Hall, who may be in the bullpen, may be in the rotation. I think they're starting him in the rotation, but he
needs to be in the bullpen.
Electric. He's electric with stuff. So either way, they've got a lot more, I think, talent. And John Means should be back next year, I believe, too, at some point. I think he came off Tommy John, so I think he'll be back mid-season. But the Orioles, I don't think did enough for the rotation, especially because Pablo Lopez got traded this week, and the Orioles have the strongest farm system in baseball. I don't know what they were doing. I think there was definitely a trade to be made there for Pablo Lopez.
The only thing about the Pablo Lopez trade and the fit with the Orioles is that the Marlins were like adamant about getting a major league player, and I don't know if the Orioles, if they're starting to want to contend, I don't know if they've got the major league talent right now to start giving guys away. So I think that's kind of the only thing, like, because you think about who you would give away that would be on the same playing field as an Arias, and you think something like a Anthony Santander or something, and he's going to be a key piece for the Orioles. They can't really afford to trade him, so it's kind of a tough, that would have been kind of a tough trade for me to give away a major league piece when you're trying to go into contention and a guy you can't really give up.
Here's who it would have been. It wouldn't have been Santander because Santander's a DH. It would have been Cedric Mullins.
Yeah, and that would have been a terrible trade for me.
That would have been tough, because Mullins is a good defensive center fielder with a pedigree of being at least above average on offense.
And not to mention, he's coming off of a down year. I mean, he's going to be better than he was last year, I think.
Mm-hmm. I was also thinking about Jorge Mateo, but I don't think Mateo has the kind of value that Arias brings with the bat, even with the glove. No. I think Mateo is one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. Let's give him his due. We'll give Hank the Mateo due. He's one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball, and he stole 35 bases last year with stolen base improving rules coming to the game. He could be a very valuable player next year. but I don't know if he's going to be as valuable as Arias, and I don't know that the Marlins would be valuing him the same. And then, you're looking at their farm system, and you're looking at a bunch of really, really high ceiling outfielders, Cowser and Kjerstad, and just, I really like the Orioles farm system to be able to make some of those big trades for aces, and they didn't do it. So I don't love that, but I still think the Orioles are an exciting team because when you have Adley Rutschman right now, anything could really happen here. They've got a lot of ceiling with this team.
Yeah, not to mention, Gunnar Henderson got named by Pipeline, their number one prospect in Major League Baseball, and I think he's legit. So
yeah, Gunnar and Adley are going to lead this team in the future.
Yeah, not to mention, they've had the solid big leaguers too, like Mountcastle, Hayes, Santander, Mullins. Like those are all pretty solid big league players. None of them are elite players or anything, but they're good. And their lineup's gonna be good. Their bullpen should be pretty good. And you look at the rotation is really their weakness. And you hope that Grayson Rodriguez, who's my favorite pitching prospect in baseball right now,
Jackson Holiday,
he's healthy. Sorry. You hope that he comes up and pitches healthy, and he'll be good to go. So
I forgot about Jackson Holiday, and I forgot about Kobe Mayo, and I forgot about Judd Fabian, all of whom are really good.
Well, I don't know about Judd Fabian, but
hey, he's at least a decent one. Yeah, Jordan Westberg too. Joey Ortiz. They got a lot of good prospects. I'm just saying in a package for a really good starting pitcher, they had a lot of pieces to be able to throw around, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, they still might.
They traded
still might do it.
20th best prospect for Cole Irvin. So
yeah, the thing with Irvin is he's controllable through like 2027, so you're getting like 5 years or something of him, which is pretty decent for that as well. But let's stay in the division there. And the Tampa Bay Rays did Tampa Bay Rays things, and they signed 3 players to contract extensions. First up was Jeffrey Springs at a 4-year, $31 million deal. It can reach 5 years for $65 million, or about 66 if all the incentives and options picked up. Then you got Pete Fairbanks with a 3-year, $12 million deal with a 4th-year option. And then Yandy Diaz for 3 years for $24 million, also with a 4th-year option.
Yeah, I'll start with Jeffrey Springs. I think that's a pretty good deal. Obviously with his service time, I think they bought out a year or two of free agency there. So it's kind of hard to judge sometimes with these extensions for guys who are in ARB because of just how many years are they buying out of free agency, how much discount are they getting, during the last couple of years of ARB, that kind of thing. But Jeffrey Springs is pretty good. He'll be a Ray for a while now. He had a really good season in 2022. I don't know if he's the type of guy who's going to repeat that, but he's going to be solid for them going forward. Doesn't walk a lot of guys, had great strikeout numbers, but I don't know if the stuff is going to continue to be like, elite level stuff, but I think he'll be a really solid pitcher. He's a swing guy. The Rays that's a rotation guy for the Rays, is a swing guy. So he's a really solid piece, and he'll be in the rotation this year. And I think he'll be, I think he's like talent-wise probably a number 3 in a rotation, which this is a great deal for that. Just depends on the how much did you save by doing the extension over just letting it play out. So
yeah, and so Jeffrey Springs is I don't want to. It's the Rays, right? They're gonna find a way to get some value out of Jeffrey Springs. I don't really distrust them here. What I do want to do is praise Yandy Diaz. The last 3 full seasons, 2020 through 2022, Yandy Diaz has a 383 on-base percentage, a 130 WRC plus, and a greater walk rate than strikeout rate, which is the second player we've talked about like this. But Yandy Diaz also does it while playing a pretty solid third base. So, yeah, this is the type of guy who is way more valuable than this, I think. Even though he's not like the greatest defensive third baseman, if he can play it serviceably while providing you a 383 on base percentage, this is the type of guy you could throw in at leadoff hitter, right? And he'll get on base in front of your sluggers. You could hit him 6th and have him driving some runs, right? But a guy with a 383 on base percentage getting what, a $12 million a year, $8 million a year. That
Yeah.
seems very like he's underpaid to me, and the Rays kind of like to do this where they'll buy out a year of free agency for pretty cheap. But man, I like Yandy Diaz a lot. I think this is a heist for the Rays. What a signing to keep him in this lineup and keep them as effective as they've been.
If you want to see something wild, go look up Yandy Diaz's Baseball Savant page.
Yeah,
it's all in the Reds.
I bet it's not what you expect. Literally, like, I think the lowest one of the hitting categories outside of barrel percentage. I mean, his expected slugging's 68th percentile, but the lowest one outside of that's 91 percentile.
Yeah. He looks like Ohtani on the Savant page. Like, it's just it's obscene.
He's crazy. Really good. But I think Yandy Diaz had a really good year, and he's a good player. I think the biggest heist, honestly, though, I think Pete Fairbanks is the biggest heist because I think that you're getting – and of course, I don't think they really bought out that much free agency with him. But with the contracts we've been seeing for these hard-throwing relievers this year, Pete Fairbanks he's averaging 99 on his fastball in 2022, and he had a .86 FIP and a 1.13 ERA, and that's coming off a season in 2021 where he pitched, a lot more, and he had a 2.70 FIP, a 3.59 ERA is a little higher, but he's a really, really, really good pitcher, and he's throwing extremely hard. I think his best is yet to come. So, Pete Fairbanks is a dude.
Here's my go ahead, Damian.
I was gonna say, if Fairbanks can stay healthy, this is a steal.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say too.
We've seen him. He really rose to prominency in that 2020, postseason, late in the season into that postseason run. There was pretty much the main reliever leading that team to the World Series against the Dodgers. His thing is, if he could just stay healthy. I mean, you're talking about a guy who he pitched 24 innings this year, but his last, I believe, 22 innings were scoreless. Like, if he could just stay healthy throughout an entire season, this $7 million a year is what he's getting, would be not even $7 million a year. $7 million is the option. He's only getting what?
$3 million, right?
$4 million? $4 million a year. That's what he's getting. $4 million. $7 million's on the option. And they did buy out 1 year of free agency, but even then, like, he's so good at 6'6". I mean, as hard as he throws and as tall as he is, I mean, he just blows people away.
It's a very Rays signing, is Pete Fairbanks, but I think the risk is baked into this contract, right? It's very low, especially considering the deals other guys got, that are maybe less hard throwing, maybe less reliable even than Pete Fairbanks has been, but they, their reputation is garnered them more. The risk is baked in here. He's not making a ton, but if he explodes, right, it'll look like a steal. But if you're Pete Fairbanks, he made $12 million, guaranteed. Right. Good for him.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump over to the New York Mets. They made a couple deals this week. One was signing outfielder Tommy Pham to a 1 year, $6 million deal. And then the other was signing Jeff McNeil to a 4 year, $50 million extension that has a 5th year option that could take the total guaranteed money up to $63.75 million.
Yeah, I'll start with McNeil. This was an interesting extension because, I think he was maybe 2 years away from free agency. He's came up really late. He was a late bloomer. He came up at age 26 in 2018. So he's on the wrong side of 30 already. So I don't think he would have hit his free agency till age 33. And it's interesting.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's interesting with his profile as to what kind of contract he potentially could have gotten at age 33. So and how his profile will age. So I think that this is probably a good deal for the Mets. They're only getting – you're only going to be paying him, barely over $10 million. Like, they're paying him like $12 million a year for a guy who's coming off a 6 WAR a year. I mean, that's pretty good value, but it's interesting to think about how he would age and how much you're actually like buying out of free agency. How much would he be worth at that point? And I think you're getting a really good discount, but it's a lot of times you see these extensions for ARB guys and they're like, in their mid 20s when they get that extension, and you're like, okay, they're giving up a lot of money, or the team's taking a pretty big risk here. But with this one, it's just weird because he's already 30, and it's an interesting look. But I think it's a great deal for the Mets. They're bringing back a guy who they really like. He's a good player. I don't think he's going to put up another 143 WRC plus next year. His batting average on balls in play was pretty high. And we'll see how he ages. But I mean, doesn't hit for a lot of power. But man, he's a really solid player. Doesn't strike out. He's really reliable for them. And he's gotten to where he plays pretty good defense too. So really, really solid deal there for the Mets, in my opinion.
I've got a comp for this deal, and it's actually decent, other than the fact that I think McNeil's a worse defender than this player. But said player got 4 years, $56 million at that age. After coming up late and going all the way to free agency. That player being Ben Zobrist. 4 years, $56 million. This is 4 years, $50 million for a better hitter, worse defender, less versatile player in Jeff McNeil, and at a much younger age, which tells me that I think the Mets did well in this deal. That McNeil had McNeil been a free agent, I think he would have gotten a lot more right now. But given that it's not really up to him to negotiate, they bought him out a year to guarantee him $50 million. I think it's a year of free agency, I believe. So 2 years of free agency.
Potential to be 3.
Right. So, and I think Jeff McNeil's kind of made it apparent that he wants to stay in New York for the entirety of his career.
Yeah, when you're at age 30 and they offer you this kind of money too, and it's a risk not to take it, because you never know, like, as you age, how you might get hurt. You might just not be the same guy again. You get offered that $50 million, man, that's tough to turn down if you're 30 years old, and you definitely aren't getting paid for another 3 years if you don't take it. So
yeah, it's smart on both sides, because with the rule changes coming into play, Jeff McNeil's already been really good, but I wonder how much he might actually be able to get, just batting average wise. Like, he hit 326 with hitting against the shift and all that. Like, could you imagine what he could do with the shift not in place?
I don't think he was shifted all that much for, compared to other lefty hitters, but maybe
a tiny bit. Shifted at all now.
Well, yeah.
Right. Can't be. Yep.
So
just remember, though, that this is a guy who's only hit 10 home runs once in his career.
Yeah.
So he's got to rely on those base hits, those doubles, those pokes, the making contact, and as soon as that starts to fall away, that may result in him making a quick exit from Major League Baseball.
Yeah. So, but the other deal the Mets did was signing Tommy Pham to a 1 year, $6 million deal. Just basically going to become a fourth outfielder there. They were in the running for Duvall, and that, I think they fell short just late. And then the next day, I think was when they signed Tommy Pham. So really similar contracts, guy who's going to be your fourth outfielder there. I doubt he won't play any center. That'll be Nimmo, but gives you some ability to, if Marte's still going to miss some time. I know he had that hand injury that is going to take him out of being participating in the WBC. So that's it just gives you some insurance there, for the corner outfield spots.
Yeah, Tommy Pham he's been a pretty good big leaguer for a while, but these past couple of years have been a little rough. 2021 wasn't great. He put up a league average stat line. 2022 was pretty bad. He was, an 89 WRC plus, got traded midseason. I just don't think he's all that good. But this is a guy who, he's still got those walks. He still walks a lot. His plate discipline is solid. It was down in 2022, but he's, for his career, at a 12% walk rate. It wasn't down by that much. He's still better than league average, with his eye, and that's something that might bounce back. So, I think he's good at insurance. He's kind of a similar type of player to Mark Canha, just not as good. So I think that might be kind of what they're going for there is, if they have an injury to Mark Canha or with Starling Marte being out, they might get another guy who's kind of similar. So, but maybe just not quite as good. So I think he'll probably make the roster and stuff, but he's not, he's just not all that good anymore.
Also, I think his off the field antics are more of a, they're more important to him than on the field. So
yeah,
maybe.
So the next couple ones we have here, they're a bit smaller, but I guess the biggest of them would be the Brewers signing Brian Anderson to a 1 year, $3.5 million deal. I heard he'll potentially be in the outfield there. I think that's the plan for them, is to play him in right field. which is, I know he can play there. Usually he was playing
Yeah.
third base with the Marlins, but he was a pretty good prospect that just never really worked out as good as people thought he was going to be. He had a couple really good years. 2018, 2019 were pretty solid. Even in the 2020 season was a pretty decent year. But the last couple years really struggled to stay on the field, and basically just fell out of time with the Marlins. So it'll be interesting to see if the Brewers, it's the type of candidate that they always seem to go for, the guy who can hit really well, and if he's given the opportunity and go into a hitter-friendly ballpark.
Yeah, Brian Anderson's a really solid player when he's healthy. I mean, he's put up good numbers throughout his career. He just can't. He hadn't been able to stay healthy, like you said. And I think he's a good signing for the Brewers for that cheap. I'm kind of surprised nobody else gave him that or a little bit more. I mean, he's a good player. So, but I mean, it is what it is. Playing outfield, he's got a great arm. Like that's a big thing with him. It's just he's got a cannon for an arm, and we'll see what happens. He's definitely an interesting player and definitely somebody who could make the Brewers better this year because their lineup still needs help.
I was going to say the only thing I have here is that if you've looked at the Zips projection for the Brewers, they had one player projected for over a 260 batting average this season. And I think Brian Anderson makes two players projected for that. So, and I think one of them was a rookie, like a guy who hasn't played in the majors at all. So they do not have much consistency in that lineup. It's going to be a lot of feast or famine with Willy Adames, Rowdy Tellez, Yelich. Brian Anderson does add a little bit of stability there. I think he's a little more reliable in terms of his plate approach and everything that he does.
Yeah, so the couple other moves we had, and David, you hit on one, Matt, you hit on the other. I'll let you guys decide how you want to do it. But the Mariners signed Tommy La Stella to a one-year veteran minimum deal, and then the Philadelphia Phillies signed Josh Harrison to a one-year, $2 million deal.
I'm talking about Tommy La Stella, dang it. That's Cubs legend Tommy La Stella. Cubs World
Braves
Series
legend.
champion
Braves
Tommy
legend
La
Tommy La
Stella.
Stella.
Yeah, but he didn't win a championship at the Braves. Tommy La Stella is awesome, but he's been not good the last couple of years. It's been since 2020 that he was an above league average bat. This is a little dude who actually generates some power with his swing, and that's funny to me because he's tiny. I went to a game an Iowa Cubs game where I was standing next to him, and I was the same height as him, but he was way skinnier than I was. This is a dude who's
5'11", 180.
Yeah, they're embellishing that. He's short, he's small, but he's able to generate that power, and it's always been nice. He's also got a great plate approach. He's a perfect little bench bat for the Mariners. He's going to fit their culture really well. The Mariners are a fun team this year, and I really hope Tommy La Stella kind of gets it going a little bit and gets into that role as that kind of utility bench bat that can kind of splash in really good plate appearances whenever he makes an appearance for them.
Yeah. Tommy La Stella to me is very similar to Adam Frazier, who they just got rid of, but it's kind of the replacement for him. But yeah, and then Josh Harrison signed with the Phillies. I mean, Josh Harrison's a Philly now, I guess, is the takeaway here. It's not a ton. I mean, it's just like he's a utility guy. He was okay last year. He's a league average hitter, league average defender,
Really good defense
average
last
base
year.
runner. Yeah, he was good last year, but in his career, I mean, he's pretty. I mean, he's not bad or anything. He's just not like great defensive player. He'll play different positions. He's a solid bench player, but like he's not a ton more than that. But interesting player, but he'll probably help him some. He'll be in the big league roster. I mean, it's not anything that really moves the needle, but he's a fine player.
And he brings energy.
He does bring energy.
One of the big things too. So as far as player moves, that was all that we had over the past couple of weeks. We did have a couple things to deal with the Braves, but they signed the Brian Snitker to an extension through 2025. So Matt, your thoughts on Brian Snitker being extended?
I mean, Brian Snitker's had a great record as a Braves manager. I mean, he's won a World Series. They've made the playoffs every single year except for 2017, his first year on the job when they were still in rebuild mode. They won more games last year than they'd won in any season in like 20 years almost. And he's done a fantastic job. I think when it comes to like on the field managing, like, strategic lineup management, that kind of thing, He's not the best guy at that. He makes some mistakes. He's not, I don't always trust the moves he makes, but he's probably possibly the best. Him and Dusty Baker maybe, and maybe a couple other guys. He's up there with the best of the clubhouse managers that are just beloved by their players in baseball. And he's just his record speaks for itself. So I mean, extending him through 2025 is great. He is almost 70 years old, so I think he's 67 maybe. So I don't know how long he will continue to be the manager. I don't know, but I think he's got um, a lifetime deal with the Braves. As long as he wants to be Brave, he'll be a Brave. So manager, and that might be it. At 2025, he might retire. I mean, he'll be 70 years old. So, but we'll see. But I'm excited to see Ryan Snitker stick around. He's done a great job, and you're not gonna not extend him. So.
Yeah, and then another thing, kind of dealing with the Braves, is that one of their front office members has just left and been hired as the general manager for the Houston Astros, and that's Dana Brown. I believe that he started his career as a scout in 1994 with the Pirates. I wasn't able to find a full page on him, so if you guys find one, let me know. But said he spent 9 seasons as a assistant to the GM for the Blue Jays, as well as working in the scouting department for the Expos/Nationals from 2002 through 2009. He joined the Braves in 2019 through the 2020 season, and was where he oversaw the drafting of Michael Harris, which we just saw win Rookie of the Year, Spencer Strider, who was the runner-up, and then Vaughn Grissom as well. So a guy who's been a long time in the game, known for drafting and developing players well, and then he's going to Houston, where they don't need any help doing that.
Yeah, look at his Blue Jays work too. Vladdy Jr., Bo Bichette. Like, yeah. This dude's. I hate it. It stinks that Houston got him, man. What a great move. All right, Houston's only done good things coming off of that World Series championship this offseason, it seems like.
And to be fair, he was a runner-up, or at least finalists, in the Mets and Mariners last GM searches.
Yeah, and he signed. You mentioned Michael Harris, Vaughn Grissom, Spencer Strider. He also signed Shea Langoliers out of the draft too, who was who was a top 40 prospect, and got called up to Oakland late in the year. And I think he's there's a lot of talk about him being really, really good. So he's still going. I thought Dana Brown did a great job with the Braves, and I mean, he's been with Anthopoulos for a long time. It kind of sucks to lose him, but I mean, when you have a lot of success, anytime you have a group that has a lot of success, from the top, Anthopoulos is going to lose guys because they're doing good, and you're not going to promote him over Anthopoulos. So, he's going to get that opportunity somewhere. It's just a sign of doing a really good job. So, good for the Astros. I don't know if I would have taken him over a Click, because I mean, what Click's done is incredible, and Dana Brown doesn't have experience as an actual GM. He's really just been more of a drafting, scouting type guy, but he's he's done a very, very good job with the Braves, and I think he'll be successful in Houston.
Well, we all know Jim Crane's the real GM anyways.
Yeah, well, he decided to be about midseason this year.
Yeah. So the last little thing we wanted to hit on was that we talked about the Detroit Tigers announcing their field changes a couple weeks ago, and I believe it was just last week the Toronto Blue Jays announced what they were going to do to their stadium. So they've made all kinds of changes. It would take half this episode just trying to go over all the changes they made, but essentially they've basically hired or raised the wall in most of the places except center field. They dropped the wall by 2 feet there. And then in the power gaps, they brought it in. So it used to be like 375 in right field or right center and left center. Those are now down to 360 and 359. And then more towards the center field gaps. It's dropped a couple feet on each one, and then 10 feet on right center field. So making Rogers Center even more of a bandbox than it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's pretty wild to make that ballpark smaller. I mean, it's not like one of these ballparks that's like Comerica or something that's notoriously gigantic. And, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess they just want Vlad Jr. to break a home run record, even if their pitchers give up more home runs than anybody else. So
The thing that kind of shocks me is that the wall was 10 foot, and in certain sections they're moving it to like 14 feet and 4 inches and
yeah,
14 feet. It's like I always felt that wall was extremely high all the way around as it was, and now they're just raising it in most places.
That's the weird
well.
part for me. But
Yeah.
this offense is definitely, it doesn't need any help. So any little benefits you're going to give it, those might be a little bit more exponential than the deficits your pitchers would give up, I think.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. So, we'll figure out what we're going to do here, but we're going to start jumping into division breakdowns and predictions episode here soon. Over the next few weeks, as spring training gets ready to start, and we get ready to push on to the 2023 opening day. But before we wrap it up here, anything else you guys want to hit on?
Not too much. Just we're getting pretty close. Just a couple weeks until pitchers and catchers report. Which, it's funny that hearing that, it's so exciting. Pitchers and catchers are reporting, but literally nothing's going to happen for like 2 weeks after that until you get some spring training games in which you might see a big league regular play like an inning. So, we get so excited for it. Then it's like still, a month and a half away from that. But it's always good when things start to move along and guys start to report to camp and. One other little prediction here, that I'll go ahead and make for our next couple weeks. I don't think we're done with big trades. I think you're going to see a surprising big trade. There's a few teams out there that I think have had a little bit, maybe not disappointing off season, but maybe they missed on some guys that they were hoping to get. And, maybe a team like the Orioles or maybe the Dodgers. Like I was going to mention the Dodgers is one of them. I mean, maybe one of these teams, like you saw the Twins, they're like, well, we didn't get any of the free agent pitchers, so we really need to make a trade. Like, I mean, I think theoretically, like a guy like Brian Reynolds could maybe still be available, or even though they've been kind of saying he's not, like someone might end up blowing away that price out of like, oh my God, we got to do something, and we'll see what happens, but I don't really think that would be a fit for the Orioles, at least maybe for the Dodgers, but we'll see what happens. But I don't think we're done. I think there will be another big trade or two because free agency is pretty much done. These teams are evaluating where they're standing right now, and some of them are like, man, we just need one more piece, and we're right there. And I think that might end up being a trade piece here in the next couple of weeks, but we'll find out. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
Matt, you mentioned not seeing the players, but it's World Baseball Classic year.
Yeah,
that's
There's
right.
Plenty of players playing. They'll be playing important games. So right off the bat, too,
I'm excited for that.
I do hope that there's no injuries or anything. These guys are able to get going quickly. We already see guys at camp. I sent Damien a video, Cody Bellinger today. So things are getting going. World Baseball Classic soon.
I believe that players who are playing the World Baseball Classic report next week, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was correct. Like the 8th or something. So, I mean, we're literally just a week away from those players at least starting to get to camp. So it's exciting times. We'll have plenty of the World Baseball Classic, coverage going on here, but it was a good episode. Thanks everyone for tuning in to episode 112 of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.